So tell me what you make of this. A farmer's wife is found in a barn on their Iowa hog farm with a corn rake sticking out of her back. It's like a pitchfork, but the rake only has 4 steel tines, but she's found with 6 puncture wounds. Her husband is suspect number 1, but he has an alibi, their 13-year-old son. So is it murder or a freak accident? Let's dig into this together. It is so good to see you. I'm Amy, and this is True Crime Recaps. Every week, Chris and I are here bringing you all the crime in half the time. Now, if that sounds good to you, I hope that you will give this a like and hit subscribe so you never miss a recap. Now, on with the story, and it's a crazy one. It's a chilly fall morning on November 10th, 2018. Amy Mullis heads out to the hog barn to help her husband, Todd, and her 13-year-old son, Tristan, get ready for some baby pigs that are supposed to be arriving in a couple of days. Now, Amy stands on a bucket to clean the lights, but they're like high above her head and she's straining to reach them. While meanwhile, the guys are busy setting up portable heaters and getting the feeding equipment ready for the pens. Everyone's working hard, but then Amy starts to feel dizzy. And that's not something that she can just ignore. She's just had an outpatient medical procedure a few days earlier, and that day is the first time that she feels well enough to get out and do some chores. So when Todd and Tristan see her starting to get a little bit wobbly, Todd tells her to stop, go inside, and rest. But on her way in, he asks if she feels up to going into the red shed and getting a pet carrier that he wants to use to put a litter of kittens in. He's going to be doing some machine work on the farm later, and he doesn't want them getting in the way. So, he's a nice guy. He wouldn't even hurt a kitten. Tristan testifies that he heard his dad say, if you can get it to the shop, that would help. But if you can't get it, then just leave it and we'll get it. So, okay, Amy leaves. So the two guys stay in the barn and keep working. Tristan says that the only time he left his dad alone was when he went to grab a drink in the office at the front of the barn. But he's not sure how long he was gone or when exactly he left, but he thinks it was at least a couple of times. Well, after about an hour and a half, the two of them head to the office together. Now that's when Todd looks out the window and notices the pet carrier isn't outside the shop where he asked Amy to leave it. So he tells Tristan to go check on his mom. And when he gets out to the shed, he finds his mother on her hands and knees with a corn rake stuck in her back. So can you imagine seeing something like that? Obviously, as you can guess, he screams for his dad. And when Todd comes running, he tells him to go get the truck, and Tristan, runs to do that. Meanwhile, Todd pulls the rake out of his wife's back, and he puts her on Tristan's lap in the passenger seat of his truck. So picture, if you will, this traumatic scene. His teenage son is holding his dying mother in his arms while he heads for the hospital 13 miles away. As he's driving, Todd calls 911, and they tell him to stop and try CPR, which is like, stop? Really? Is that the best advice? But he does it. He pulls over, and he sends Tristan out to the road to watch out for the emergency vehicles so he can, flag them down. Meanwhile, Todd and Amy are alone in the truck, and Todd starts chest compressions. He's still on the phone with 911, but he's holding it to his ear, with his shoulder and doing the thing. And in the short window of time before the deputy gets there, and Amy is hovering between life and death, in those precious few seconds, Todd whispers something. Now, I'm going to tell you what they think he said, but I want to see if you can make it out for yourself. So take a listen to the clip of his 911 call that was played back at his trial and see what you think. Oh, and thank you to Law and Crime for publishing this.
Now, Todd, here I'm going to play you the part where you're doing the chest compressions, and I'm just going to ask that you listen in between the chest compressions, okay? Now, Todd, did you just hear that whisper at the end of that?
Yes.
And what did you whisper?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay, I'm going to play it again.
Did you catch that? So the prosecution thinks he says, cheating whore. Actually, they think the whole sentence is, go to hell, cheating whore. Okay, so we're going to play it back again. What about now? Did you hear it? It's hard to tell, right? And when you're listening for something specific, you tend to hear it. What is that word for that? There is a word for that. But it would be also pretty dumb for Todd to say something like that on a recorded line. But then again, criminals have done dumber things, so it's a tough one. Anyway, just seconds later, the cops and ambulances show up and take over. Amy used to work as an ER nurse, and there are reasons why she quit that are important to the story, so we're coming back to this. But sadly, at this point in the story, she dies at Regional Medical Center in Manchester, Iowa, where she used to work. Or to be more accurate, she dies in the ambulance on the way there. But as doctors examine her, they're surprised to see that she has 6 puncture wounds in her back because, Todd told them that she fell on a corn rake, but the corn rake only has 4 tines. So if she fell on it like Todd thinks she did, says she did, assumes she did, she would only have 4 wounds in her back. And with that realization, this case goes from a freak accident to something much more sinister. So the Mullis hog farm is out near Earlville, Iowa. The closest town is Manchester. It's about 15 minutes away. Manchester has a population of less than 6,000 people, and Earlville has a fraction of that. So, it's small. The farm is worth a few $1 million. It's a big spread with a house and 4 major outbuildings, including 2 hog barns, and each one of those is about as big as a football field. And Todd loves the farm life. It means everything to him, but not so much to Amy. She loved fishing, hunting, and camping, but she wanted out of the marriage. And if she left him, the farm would have to be sold off. And according to court records, she would get somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2 million and half the land holdings. So that's nothing to sneeze at. Well, as investigators start to poke around and they're talking to Amy's friends, a different story starts to emerge. The Mullis marriage isn't as picture perfect as Todd wants it to be. 5 years before this happened in 2013, Amy had an affair. So she met Todd when she was barely out of her teens, and they got married when she was only 20. After 14 years, she's realizing she's not happy, but now they have 3 kids together and she feels trapped. It doesn't take long for the rumor mill to get going. They live in this small, tight-knit community and people talk. Plus, it seems like she's not really trying to keep it a big secret. She's telling her friends and her family she doesn't know if she wants to work it out with Todd. And she says she's scared of what he might do if she tells him that she wants a divorce. So imagine what he would do if he knew that she was cheating. Eventually, they decide to try to work it out for the sake of their 3 kids and the farm. But part of the deal is that Amy has to quit her job at the hospital and come and work on the farm with him. To be fair, it is a big operation and it's a lot of work. And there's a reason why farmers had so many kids in the olden days. They needed that free farm labor to keep things going. So Amy agrees to go and work with him, but secretly she tells her friends that she feels more like a prisoner than ever. And to her, it feels less like a family business and more like she's under surveillance. According to interviews that her friends gave 48 Hours, they say that there is this running joke that Amy has an improved friend list, and they even call her POT, which is short for Prisoner of Todd. Oh, happy Valentine's Day, honey. By 2018, things are worse than ever between them. She's telling her friends and family that she's still not happy. She hasn't been happy for years, and she doesn't see how it can work out with Todd. And meanwhile, she's found herself another man that she wants to marry. As it turns out, he works right there on the family farm. The man's name is Jerry Frazier. He's the operations manager and she's the bookkeeper. So, they've been working pretty closely together. And she's been confiding in him. She's telling him she feels like a hostage on the farm and she's afraid that if she tries to leave Todd, he'll make her disappear. She even hinted that if he took her life, he'd feed her body to the hogs because, they're going to eat anything. And just like that, all trace of you is gone. So you might think that a farmer who knows what hogs can do, would just kind of disappear her. But on the other hand, if he made her death look like a freak accident, then he wouldn't have to face years and years of people whispering about how he might have disappeared her. So Jerry and Amy are getting closer and sparks are starting to fly, but the thing is that Jerry is also married and he's got 2 kids of his own. So the 2 of them are sneaking around, they're meeting on back roads, motel rooms, wherever they can be alone, but it only lasts for a couple of months before Todd sees a phone bill in July of 2018 that shows more than 100 texts going back and forth between his wife and his farm manager. It does not look good for either of them, but they explain it away. Jerry tells him it's nothing. It's just farm business. Amy says the same thing. But Todd he doesn't really believe it. He calls Jerry's wife and he asks her if she knows what's going on, but she doesn't know any more than he does. And Jerry is like, this has gone way too far. I'm in way too deep. I got to take a step back. But they do take a step back from each other, but they also keep seeing each other on and off until she dies. But even if she couldn't convince him, Jerry, to run away with her, according to her brother, she was planning on striking out on her own. He even testified that she came to him in August of 2018, just about 3 months before she died, to say that she was going to wait until the crops were harvested and then she was leaving. But as of November, she's still very much married to Todd and working on the farm, and so is Jerry. On the outside, Todd is acting like everything is fine, but secretly on the inside, he's really upset, and you know what that means. Let's go to the search history. He's going really dark. He's looking up things like what happens to cheaters in history, killing unfaithful women, and what happened to cheating spouses in historic Aztec tribes. And yes, I did Google what happened to cheating spouses in historic Aztec tribes, because how do you hear something like that and not look it up? It's actually a lot tamer than you might think. Basically, the women were immediately strangled, which is obviously awful. But, I was kind of hoping for something closer to death by rake. And obviously, so was the prosecution, but no. However, that wasn't the most incriminating search term found. 4 days before she died, someone searched for information and diagrams about where the life-supporting internal organs are located in the human body. Now, Todd says it wasn't him, but a forensic pathologist says Amy was impaled with the corn rake at least twice and maybe even 3 times. Now, 2 of the wounds were angling up and 4 were at a downward angle, and all the puncture wounds were deadly. Now, investigators put 2 and 2 together and came up with murder. Now, Todd was arrested in February 2019, a little less than 3 months after her death. But did he do it? Now, most people agreed he was the kind of guy who would do it if he thought she was going to leave him. But if he didn't know that she was going to leave him, then I don't know. On the stand, Todd testified that he thought everything was good between them. But, what else is he going to say? Of course, if he did know about her and Jerry, wouldn't he also have tried to take out her lover? But Jerry said he never felt threatened by him after he confronted them about the texting. And that's the statement that Todd's lawyers kind of ran with. In this bizarre twist, they told the jury that they also believed Amy was murdered. They agreed on that. But without naming Jerry, they implied that the killer was not Todd. So it got convoluted fast. In an earlier deposition, his son said Todd was out of his sight for about 1.5 minutes that morning, but then later at trial, he didn't remember saying that, and he couldn't say for sure if his dad had left the hog shed at all. But still, if he had left 1.5 minutes, is that all it takes to kill somebody with a corn rake? I'm afraid. And what kind of father would knowingly send his 13-year-old son into a barn to find his mother with a pitchfork impaled in her back? According to a jury, Todd Mullis is that kind of a father. In September 2019, he was found guilty of murder and he got life in prison without parole. So, after all that, he lost his farm, his sons, and his freedom anyway. But was it justice? I mean, do you agree with the jury, or is an innocent man in jail? Let's talk about it in the comments. And thank you so much for spending your time with me today. If you like getting all the crime in half the time, please give this a like and hit subscribe and the bell so you never miss a thing. But don't go away. We got another recap coming up right now. So I'll see you soon.